In this episode of Thrive with R3, we take a deep dive into the often overlooked issue of alcohol and substance abuse among senior and C-suite leaders. We'll explore the impact it has not only on the individual, but also on the organization, and discuss how intervention and integrated care can play a crucial role in recovery when addiction spirals out of control. Hi, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Thrive with R3. I'm your host, Jamie Gassmann, and I'm joined here by my co-host, Dr. George Vergolias. Today, we're thrilled to welcome our guest, Marc Kantor, as we dive into an important conversation about substance and alcohol abuse among senior and C-suite leaders. We'll explore the profound ripple effects, both personal and professional, that addiction can have on leaders and the organizations they serve. So to get started, welcome, Marc. We're so happy to have you on the show.
Welcome, Marc.
As an interventionist by trade, can you share what led you to this line of work and how that journey connects to your role at J. Flowers Health Institute?
My journey, for the purposes of this conversation, started in 2004 when I was 32 years old and was deposited into treatment at the Betty Ford Center in Rancho Mirage, California. For the previous 10 years, I had been on a slow burn, addicted to Adderall, alcohol, maladaptive behaviors. And they were all, I want to say, somewhat controllable or manageable for a long time. And then all of a sudden it accelerated out of control. And by the time about 2 days after my daughter turned 2, my wife came to me and said, I'm taking her and I'm leaving. And, you're an alcoholic, you're a workaholic, you're an addict, you're all these things, you're a liar. And I knew they were all true. I knew those things were true. But I didn't know how to make them go away. I could not imagine a life without at least Adderall. And for a lot of addicts, including myself, we see the drug of choice or whatever it is, or the maladaptive behavior, whether it's gambling, pornography, or whatever it is, as the solution. The people around you will see your solution as the problem. And that's where the conflict in the intervention process begins. When I say addict, I say that for me. I don't say that for you. And when I'm in an intervention and somebody says, are you saying I'm an alcoholic or an addict? I'm saying, no, I'm not saying that, because the only person who can diagnose that is you, who can put that label on is you, and I don't want to label you. But I am saying that there seems to be problems whenever drugs, alcohol, gambling, pornography, maladaptive behaviors are around. There seems to be trouble. And let's figure that out. Because again, the intervention is about the de-escalation process, not the going toe-to-toe with somebody. So how I became an interventionist is I stayed in commercial real. I overstayed my welcome in commercial real estate way too long. In 2018, kind of on a whim, we moved to Florida from Washington, D.C. And I was at a point in my commercial real estate career where I would be running my fingers through my hair, sitting in my office in Bethesda, Maryland, saying, I got to get out of here because of the fear, because of running back into what is familiar to me, which we do. I took a job at a commercial real estate firm, and it wasn't even 30% of the job that it was in Bethesda. And day one, I walk in and I say to myself, what the heck am I doing here? I have no intention of doing anything they've hired me to do. I'm just doing time in order to. And that got worse and worse. That tamping down of my emotions and my feelings grew. And I'm standing in the shower one day and I said to myself, well, I can't drink, I can't have an affair, and I can't kill myself. Those are the three things. And then shortly after that, I was having dinner with my then 15-year-old daughter. And out of the blue, my daughter looks at me. She says, Dad, why don't you start doing interventions? And I look at her and I go, oh, my God. Yeah, Justine, that's exactly what I'm going to do. And that weekend, her and I started putting together the plan for what my company would look like. Doing this work as my savior and my way out to purpose and meaning in my life. And that's how it all began. That's how I became an interventionist.
You said earlier, and I love this, Marc, where you said that, you can't tell someone they're an alcoholic.
Right.
You can't tell someone they have a problem. They have to come to that realization.
Right.
So what is an interventionist? And then how do you use your own experiences to really give a very unique Marc approach to your role as an interventionist?
An intervention is it's a shifting of the family system. It is not just about that person that is going to treatment. The person that's going to treatment, in all honesty, is the person that's carrying the load for the family system. They're the one that it's absorbed. They're drinking, they're using, and it's their trauma, their personal experiences. And these traumas and these experiences can be decades old. But the intervention, if I've done my job correctly working with the family leading up to the intervention, I'm doing very little in the intervention. I'm orchestrating. I'm saying, I'm gesturing to people to talk, and it's all organized. And we set up everything. For example, how we arrive at the intervention. You never have everybody arrive at the intervention. Just come to the person's house, because people will show up 10 minutes early, 10 minutes late, 20 minutes. So one of the tricks is I pick a neutral location near the intervention, a Starbucks, a CVS parking lot, whatever's available, and have everybody meet there. And once everybody's there, then we show up together. So it's like we're not there, and then all of a sudden we're all there. And I instruct everybody ahead of time, this is how we're going to sit. This is where we're going to leave a space for the affected person to come sit. And I'm trying to place them in between two people who are the most calming for them, whether that's their mom or dad or wife or daughter or whomever it is for them, that they just feel that safety. And we want them in the middle of those two people. And we're not arguing. We're not pleading a case. We're not showing facts. None of that matters. None of that matters. And we're going around, and the families are reading letters. Why can't they speak off the cuff? Is because they'll forget. They'll stumble, they'll forget. And the crux of the intervention is you are an individual that has the right to do whatever you want to do, because they all want to assert their ability to govern self. They all want agency. The key is to if you create a safe enough environment for that affected individual, if they can feel safe and they can feel trust, they will go to treatment.
So when we look at substance and alcohol abuse that are often seen as hidden struggles amongst like a C-suite leader or a senior leader, why do you think these issues are so prevalent among kind of those executive ranks or business leaders or high profile professionals?
There's a lot of shame. There's a lot of pressure. There's perceived weakness. They feel like I'm being weak. I should be able to handle this myself. Something I hear from C-suite leaders all the time is, well, I run a $50 billion company or $50 million or whatever, and why can't I handle this? But it's very hard for them to just succeed that kind of control. They're embarrassed. They think that shouldn't be happening to them. But a big problem too for a lot of high functioning, high profile people is that I should be able to handle this.
Do you see dynamics that occur at the C-suite or the senior level that aren't as common below because of the pressures to be high performance? I mean, are there additional differences you see?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think so. I think one is that, being a high level executive or a high level entrepreneur could be harder because they have resources, and resources can be a very dangerous thing for someone who's struggling with an addiction or mental illness, because they can easily buy the cover. I've worked with a lot of executives that they're in the midst of selling their companies. If they're the buyers find out, they'll be in trouble, they'll be compromised, the price will go down. And that stuff may be true in some circumstances. We had one family we worked with where their company was bought, but the buyers had really done their due diligence. It was a multi-million-dollar deal and really did their due diligence, and they knew that the CEO was an alcoholic and that from time to time he was not reliable. And they said to him as part of this deal is, if you ever show up at the office, they held a financial penalty over his head that money they held back, and if you're going to lose this and let me tell you, there's a lot of money, and that did not help him overcome his addiction.
Can you talk a little bit about how, from your experience, what you've seen when senior leaders are struggling, with a substance abuse or an alcohol abuse? How does that ripple effect through the organization in terms of the culture, the morale, maybe productivity, maybe performance?
Oh yeah, mental illness and addiction are the spiritual malady, if you will. These are diseases that detonate before they hit the ground. So their fallout, their blowback is really wide. It goes far. And, culture is the most important thing in a company. I had a former CEO that I worked with, and he had a sign in his office and it says, "Culture eats strategy for lunch every day." And it's true. It's true, right? And so you have this trickle down. If I'm the CEO of a company and I'm addicted, you can't. First of all, you can't have intimacy and addiction in the same relationship. It just doesn't work. You can't have a marriage or a partnership in a relationship where there's addiction, because one of them is a full-time mistress and needs a lot of attention. And that means I'm going to have to neglect my partnership, my family, my employees, and they're going to feel that because I'm going to be very short with them. I'm going to be very angry at them. I'm literally not going to have the ability to focus on them. It's like your vision goes like this. It becomes tunnel vision. And when I was in the midst of my addiction, a lot of what came with that was high anxiety. So I'd see the phone ring, and it would be someone that I talk to all the time, someone that I trust and I know well. But if I was in my addictive mind, I couldn't even answer the phone.
Have you seen organizations that really are more effective than others in terms of supporting leaders through those types of challenges? And what are the qualities of those organizations that really are better than others?
I think you've got to set a culture from the very, very beginning of what we're like and how we support mental health. The airline pilots that come into what's called the HIMSS program, which is an FAA monitoring program, do very, very well in sobriety. They get long-term sobriety because one is there's no choice. You want to fly again or don't you? Right? You want your $250,000 salary or don't you? You're going to do this or you're not going to do this. And the other thing is there are several years of monitoring, and you really have to set that culture from the beginning. But then there's the liability. There's the lawyers. So I've had where executives of a company were going to participate in an intervention, and they turn around and say, "Yeah, look, I got a call from legal this morning or HR," and they say, "I just can't. I can't be there. I can't do that. It's a liability." That's also the society that we're living in today. So it's equally as hard.
And looking beyond substance and alcohol abuse, what are some of the behavioral health challenges that you see more frequently among executives and senior level professionals that maybe could be some of the drivers at some of the abuse that as a kind of almost like symptom of what they're navigating from a challenge perspective?
The system is not set up for a high level people to get help necessarily. So, even in a family system, like a family office where the person has long been out of the business, but that person is controlling the purse strings in the family, and the trust and the inheritance and all that, everybody's afraid to go to that person and say, nobody wants to rock the boat. They're all beneficiaries of a failing system. Not saying that's the case all the time. Also, a point that I want to bring is that I've been in interventions with CEOs where the CEO naturally says, "Well, I can't go to treatment. I have a company to run." But the truth is, and if you have brave executives and they're all there, and I have had this, what they'll say is, "We've got everything covered. You have nothing to worry about. Don't worry about a thing. We got it. You're good. We love you. We want you to get it." And that's an ideal scenario. But what they're really saying behind the scenes is, it takes so much time and energy to manage this guy that we will do so much better. He's not working anyway. Not like he's showing up and being productive. He's showing up, or she's showing up and creating problems. So having them out and having them in treatment is going to make this business run a lot smoother.
As you talk about this, Marc, I'm reflecting on how often when I've worked with leaders or consulted with corporations, executives, and so on, where they won't blink an eye at taking a couple weeks off or a month off because they needed heart surgery, or they broke their leg, or they needed chemo, because that's medical, right? That's a medical issue.
Not their
fault.
No,
I don't have time if it's an addiction or depression or severe depression or,
Right.
or anxiety. It's just a very interesting switch. How do you break through those individuals? How do you try to get them? In a way, it is like a negotiation, right? You're trying to get them to come to a realization. How do you do that when it's got the mental health stigma, or maybe there's comorbidity between mental health and substance abuse?
Yeah, well, there's a couple of different interventions on that. I mean, one is they know. They're sitting there saying, "No, you're wrong. I don't have a problem with alcohol. It's all good." Or, "I don't have a problem with anger," or, "I don't have a problem." They know they're in trouble. They know they're drowning. They've said to themselves 1,000 times, "I need to do something. Tomorrow's going to be different. I'm going to stop." So really what it is the intervention is just getting them to take action on what they've already said to themselves. So not so much a negotiation, but again, creating a safe environment where they can say, I'm willing to, and look, and I'm not in an intervention. We're not looking to say for someone to sign a waiver saying that, look, yes, I'm an alcoholic, I'm an addict. What I'm looking for is for them to say, I've been doing it my way for a long time and it's not working. I'm willing to try something different. They will take time off for open heart surgery or chemotherapy, because those are heroes. They go on social media and, Jake has cancer and he's a hero and he's doing it. He's setting an example. But for some reason, mental health, if you're not really tuned into this thing, if you're not really have the awareness that we have, that's weakness. That's a choice. Yeah, Jake's making a choice. Yeah, to be depressed. Why doesn't he just snap out? He's not working hard enough. He's not this, he's that, he's bad attitude. And none of that is true.
Yeah, that's such a huge insight. I mean, these medical issues are things that happen to us, whereas these mental health and substance abuse issues, these are things we brought on ourselves. That's what I hear again and again. I'm not saying I believe that, but that's what I'm hearing, right? That's that stigma.
And it's not true. I mean, a mental health issue could be dormant in somebody for years and years and years, and then some traumatic event just brings it to the top. So, but they really are a hero.
So from your perspective, what steps can organizations take to create that culture we've talked about, right? It starts with culture, where leaders can feel comfortable seeking help.
It's a great question. Well, I think one, they can have a policy of support, that if they come to a designated person or leadership and say, "Hey, I'm struggling with this," that no more has to be said. You're under our protection. Like the airline pilots. If an airline pilot goes to his union, every airline has what's called a HIMSS chairman. They say, "Hey, I got a problem." What they'll do is they'll get around this guy. they'll call him in sick and they'll have him on a plane to treatment that night. And he's going to have to follow up with certain being a program, an FAA program. They only got to wear that on his thing, and they do want to get him back to work because he is valuable. It takes millions of dollars to train him and to get his experience, so they don't want to lose him if they don't have to. But there is a system in place where, hey, you say you need help, you get help. And one of the airlines I work with, they have a zero cost policy for treatment for their pilots and their families. If you're a pilot and you say I need help, it's $0 in the door.
It seems like they're making the healing process, they're incentivizing that more than staying quiet.
Absolutely. And think about it, just the cost analysis, right? I mean, what is it if you have somebody that's a skilled worker or an attorney? There's what would it cost to replace them? So much better to protect them and to get them the help they need. And I think 10 years ago, there was a study that came out. It was sponsored by Hazelton and the the American Bar Association, and they did an anonymous survey of. I'm making these numbers up, and I could clarify, but 3,000 attorneys, and like a large percentage of them agreed in the survey that they use illicit drugs or that they suffer from depression, anxiety, that they are clinically depressed.
If someone approaches you and says, listen, I've got someone in mind, I think they're struggling with the problem with alcohol or drugs or even mental health. I'm not sure how to approach them. I'm not sure how to bring this up to them. What suggestions from your years of experience would you suggest, or what would you recommend?
One of the things I do get calls like this, and one of the things I'm inquiring about is, I'm asking questions that will give me an idea of what the intervention will look like. And by intervention, I don't necessarily mean formal intervention. I mean, just kind of going to them and saying, hey, we think there's a problem. What's their situation at home? Are they married? Are they, where are their parents and all this? How old are their kids? Things like that. And have you talked to them? Do you have a reading from them of what's going on? Because if you can use those people as allies to offer this person help, I think it's really, but again, in a corporate structure, that could be seen as a major violation. I've seen it where in companies where people at the company, the person, they know the guy's wife or the woman's husband, they're comfortable calling and say, hey, what do you think's going on here? But in a lot of situations, they're not going to do it. And that's unfortunately a system that keeps people sick.
One thing I've seen over the years, especially working in emergency psychology, emergency medicine, is the paradigm shift of kind of tough love, blaming the addictive person, to more of understanding that the breakdown in relationships, the breakdown in human connection is one of the key drivers.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that is, mental illness is not fatal. It's the isolation that comes with the mental illness. It's when they, what you typically see. So if we're doing an intervention and we start trying to put together the intervention party, who are influential people in this person's life? Where are their friends with? And often I will hear they don't have any friends.
So, Marc, what message do you have, or like message of hope do you leave with leaders and organizations who might be hesitant to address behavioral health and substance abuse challenges in the work environment?
Look, I mean, if you're someone who's willing to embrace mental health and be a leader and demonstrate to your company, hey, I'm someone who works on my mental health on a daily basis, just like I go to the gym, just like I do anything, I think that goes a long way. I mean, if you create an environment in which people can say, hey, I can come to George or I can come to Jamie because I know they get it. They're people who practice good mental health.
How can listeners learn more about you
Sure.
and about J. Flowers Health Institute?
And J. Flowers is a great example of solutions for executives. We get a lot of high-level people there, a lot of high-profile people there because J. Flowers is set up for that. It is a one-on-one concierge mental health provider. So you're not necessarily coming because you're an alcoholic, you're an addict. You're coming for an integrative evaluation. So, like for example, we get a lot of people that are having medical and mental health problems. So we're the only integrated medical and mental health program in the country. So people can come in. We have 96 preferred providers, physicians on call for our clients. So we can get someone in front of a neurologist in 24 hours.
Do you guys see people like virtually, like your reach is national, or is it even beyond international? Or
we get people from all over the world to come to Houston.
Great.
We do some virtual work with people once they've completed our programming. So they complete the comprehensive diagnostic evaluation in the first 14 days, and then we're gonna give them a diagnosis, and they can either stay with us and continue to do work. We can place them somewhere else, or a lot of times with a lot of executives, they want to return home because they need to get back to work, and we can continue working with them that way, and we can set up a really solid, watertight aftercare plan, therapists, prescribers, self-care. At J Flowers, though, we're looking at everything.
Well, this has been a pleasure, Marc. We greatly appreciate you taking part in this and just giving us your insights.
Thank you. I really enjoyed this, and I hope to do it again soon. So thank you very much.
Thank you all for listening. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Thrive with R3.
R3 is a workplace behavioral health pioneer and innovator, providing rapid response and ongoing behavioral health solutions that help people and organizations recover, perform, and thrive in the wake of disruption and stress.
For more episodes, insights, and resources, visit thrivewithr3.com.